Hey guys, resawing. Why do you want to resaw and what is it? Resawing is basically where we take a thick piece of wood and we split it down the middle. Not ripping like on a table saw, but like this was one piece and we want to cut it down its length. Now why would we want to do that? Well, there's a number of reasons. I do a lot of resawing because I like high-figured drawer fronts and things. And when I can find it, like this piece of feather crotch walnut, when I resaw it, I can get some pretty spectacular results. Now if I put this together, as you can see, I can create a pretty dramatic drawer front. Now you see one reason for resawing. But there's a lot of times we need thinner material, just for whatever reason, whether we're gluing up a drawer bottom or whatever the case. So knowing how to resaw is a pretty good thing to do. So we're going to take a look at how we do it. Now, resawing is typically done on a bandsaw. Now the reason for that is that the bandsaw blade takes less material out. The thin little blade takes less meat out, the kerf. Now, there's several keys to being able to resaw and resaw well. The first and most dominant one is having your bandsaw ready to do it. Let's take a look. Now, I've got two 14-inch bandsaws set up here. And in the back over here is a big 18-inch, 5 horsepower with an 1.25 inch blade. It's a resawing beast. As Billy said, there's no substitute for horsepower, and he's right. The bigger saws with a lot of horsepower that run the big blades, those are the best. Just no doubt about it. But I would bet very few of you have those. So does that mean you can't do it? No, you can. And we're going to look at how. Now, this is a 14-inch, same as the one over here, and we've got a riser on it. What is a riser? The riser means that we've got a block in here that we bought separately to make the height higher. That allows us to cut taller pieces of wood. But the problem with it is, the first thing is your bandsaw has got to be set up. You've got to make sure that your blade is square to your bandsaw. You want to make sure that this is parallel. That's critical. The second thing you want to do is and this is one way of doing it, is you want to make sure your fence is parallel. Now most people prefer to resaw with a fence. But another important aspect is the blade. Now I could complicate this for you, but we're not. You're going to see when you go looking at bandsaw blades, you're going to see what they call a regular. You're going to see what they call a skip and what they call a hook. Now, what does that mean? What that means is, this is a hook. And if you look very carefully, you can see the way the teeth come down kind of in the shape of a fish hook. Now, the reason for this is that this area back inside of here is called the gullet. And when you're resawing or cutting heavy material, that area allows the sawdust to be pulled out. Now, regular blades where there's a lot of teeth per inch and all of that, those blades are typically used for scroll cutting and this and that. And some people use them for resawing. I've never cared for them for that personally. I like a hook. But a skip tooth is just about what it implies. It's like every other tooth. It's a really aggressive cut. And just like on very low-powered table saws, they have the thin curved blades so that they're not taking so much meat out. Well, the skip tooth is very aggressive. And it's one of the best for use on a low-powered bandsaw. Now, these bandsaws, I think, are 2 horsepower or whatever, and they do okay. So we've got a hook on it. All right, now here's a key for me. The best resaw blade is the one that you can get to fit your bandsaw. There's 2 things you want to look for. One is get the widest blade you can. That'll fit your saw. And second, as few a teeth per inch. This is a 3 teeth per inch. I think this is about a, I don't know, it's about a 4, about a 6 on a 1/4 inch blade. So this is 3 teeth per inch. The fewer teeth and the hook or the skip means you get a very aggressive cut, and that's important. Because when you're cutting something that tall with that much material in it, you're going to have all kind of grains and everything else in there. You want something that's just going to muscle right on through it without being deflected. And aggressive cut bandsaw blades do that better. The other thing you want to do is every bandsaw has what's called a drift. Now, what am I talking about? Rarely will a bandsaw blade, if this fence is square to this table, cut it straight. Bandsaws have a drift. You may actually wind up on this bandsaw cutting this way or cutting this way to stay on the line. They don't cut dead straight like a table saw. They want to move, they want to drift. So if you're going to use your fence, you need to compensate for the drift. Let's take a look at how you do that. Now what I've got here is just simply a piece of wood about 20 inches long or something. And I drew a straight line down it. Now I want to interject something here. It seems like the drift will change almost every time you change blades. But you'll notice I've just got a straight line. Here's how to set your fence. What we're going to do is we're going to saw down about half to the halfway point and stop without moving the piece of wood. Now that's not bad, but you can't see this on camera, but in looking at this piece of wood, it's slightly angled that way. But I'm tracking straight on my line. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to loosen up my fence. So that it'll move around. And very carefully, I'm going to come over and I'm going to set this fence to the edge of that and lock it in place. Now this now means that this fence has compensated for the drift. Even though this fence is not straight to this table, it's straight to this blade. And the blade's what's going to be doing the cutting. Now the other thing is you want a good sharp blade. And you want good tension on your blade. Just follow your manufacturer's suggestion for that. A good set of guides. Now we're going to talk about them just a minute. Let's go over here, we can see this maybe a little easier. You notice that this one is using a bearing. That the bearings are set just touching the blade, top and bottom. This bearing is not touching. Okay, and that's because that when this blade is then put under pressure and pushed back, that's when it engages this bearing. So you want to hang off, I hang off of this about a 1/16 of an inch. And what I do, now the other thing you want to do when you're setting your guides, make sure your bandsaw is turning and everything is running nice and free. Don't let it snag like that. And then move your bearings in order to just touch. Don't try to use the bearings to force the blade one way or the other. The bandsaw has to run free. Then adjust your bearings or your guides into the blade. What I'm telling you is you don't want these guides pulling the blade one way or the other. Then adjust your table to be square. Okay, we've now compensated with this fence for the drift. It's square, and I already know my blade is. Now I could rip with it. And I'm going to get straight pieces. The drift has been compensated for. Bandsaws normally don't do that real well. Yeah, doing just fine. All right, resawing. Now, a 1/4 inch blade is not designed, it's designed for scroll cutting. Small pieces you can resaw. You probably heard that saw bog just a little bit. That's because I'm going way too fast on that little 1/4 inch blade. Simply put. Now, there's another thing you can do, and a lot of your saws, just like this one, will come with a guide. And this is a short one, but it's designed to attach to the fence. And what it's for a point guide. You want to set it about center of your blade. And what it's designed to do, if you have a piece of wood that's not straight, then your fence isn't going to do you much good. So what this is designed for is to have a guide with one center point, one focal point of cut. So what it does is it allows you to track it to the guide. Now you notice what happens. That 1/4 inch blade, even in this little poplar, is trying to deflect me going that fast. What can you do to help it? I'm going to show you. There's two things. One is you can set up a feather board. Now this one's opposite because I've got it set for the table saw to show you in a minute. But you don't want to set a pressure on it. You just want it as a guide. Simply a guide point. Now, the other thing you can do is if you will look, here's a bigger piece of poplar, and we've got a center line drawn down through it. And that's what we're going to be looking at sawing. Now, sometimes when you're sawing, it's very difficult. You can see the top line, but it's very difficult to see the bottom, and you can twist in and out. Here's a trick. Take a little piece of tape. You can actually mark the saw. Set it up and mark your bottom. Now you have the line on top to reference from, and you have the little piece of tape so that you can see the bottom. Now I want to show you this. You notice I stopped and I started backing out with the bandsaw running. That's usually not a real good idea because you can see right here there's a pinch. What it is that as we're resawing this, the stress inside of here is being released and this piece is trying to pinch on it. It's trying to close on it. If it does that badly, I'll pull it out and I'll actually take a screwdriver or something and stick down in here to wedge it open in order to get it out of the saw. Now the reason I stopped with this is that you see the more teeth and the 1/4 inch blade. Let's go over here to this bandsaw. The horsepower on these are pretty much even. This is not an underpowered saw, believe me. Now, this is an aftermarket fence that you can buy. But we're going to look at something else here in a minute. I'm going to set the same piece of wood up with a 3/4 inch blade with a 3 teeth per inch. Let's see how it performs. You not only seen the difference, you heard the difference. Now here's another thing you can do. Now there's an aftermarket fence, and here's this fence, but a lot of you guys have smaller bandsaws and you don't have fences. What can you do? Well, you can improvise. Here's a jig we made. Now this has the magnets. You can also clamp it. And all this is a vertical piece with a clamp base and a dowel. So that's all this is a dowel glued to it. By doing the same thing, I can create a fence. And I've got it. I'm ready to roll. But what we've cut here is some pretty small stuff. So, assuming you've got this blade on a small bandsaw, are you dead in the water? Not hardly. We'll come back and take another look at another way. Okay, probably the strongest sawing tool you have in your shop is your table saw. Can you resaw on it? Sure you can. But you got to be careful. Now we're going to talk about that. Now the first thing, just like that bandsaw blade, I prefer a good heavy rip blade. This is a 24 tooth rip blade. I want an aggressive cut. Now granted, this is going to take more meat out of here than what the bandsaw is. But, so here's something else. When you're buying wood and you're looking for something to resaw, you want to get it just as thick as you can. Now I understand completely the television programs and all of that where you see them on there and they're just resawing all these veneers, just zip, zip, zip. When you get into a lot of the exotics, particularly heavy resinous woods, rosewood, babingas, cocobolo, those kind of things, those woods, oddly enough, do not distort that much. It's because they just don't have a lot of moisture content. They have a lot of resin, and resin is a little bit more solid. But here's the thing that happens, okay? And say what you want and think what you will. If you try to take this piece, which is just not quite an inch thick, and you're going to get 3/4 inch pieces out of it, odds are you're not. Because when you resaw this, when you open this up, what you've done several things. First is any stress that's inside of this wood, you just released, and it's going to let it go wherever it may. The second thing you've done is you've set up an unequal moisture balance. What am I talking about? Well, common sense says that the outside of this piece of wood, it doesn't matter if it's kiln dried. Kiln drying is kind of like baking bread. And no matter what you do, the inside is not going to be as dry as the outside. But as soon as you open it up, it's going to try to dry out more. What happens when wood dries? It shrinks, so it cups. Now here's the problem on a table saw, is that it can pinch. Now I'm going to tell you this before I show you this. I've spent the better part of my life behind one of these. Okay? And I'm extremely comfortable on a table saw. Doesn't mean I'm not scared of it. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, this is a pretty tall piece of wood. Now, the first thing you want to do is, and I've seen guys do this, they'll crank that blade up. This blade will typically, on a 10-inch table saw, will come up and give you a 3-inch depth. Guys, you do not want to dive into a piece of wood 3 inches fully. Not on something you're holding. Okay, that's just not safe. So what's the secret? The secret is inch into it. Now I'm going to do this because I want to show it to you. I want you to see it so you know what to be prepared for. Now before I go too far, I want to show you something. The first thing I'm going to show you is that I'm not cutting this dead center. Now the reason I'm not, you'll notice this side is planed. This side is not. So I know that I'm going to be taking more off. Now normally if I'm doing something like this, I'll go ahead and plane both sides. But that's why I'm not cutting it dead center. The other thing, remember I told you what I'm doing here with this featherboard. This featherboard is not holding me to the blade. It's a guide. Now the reason that's there is so that on this short fence with this tall piece, I don't have a tendency to tip out. Now here's the problem. If this thing were to try to pinch, it's going to try to throw itself back at me. That's what I'm watching. Now I'm up here high enough. If this was a shorter piece, you want to push stick. Okay? Be careful. And we're going to look in a minute at another way of doing it that's safer. But I want to show you this. Now, before I make this final cut on my table saw, what I'm doing here is I'm going to be able to get a 3-inch depth, which means I can remove the majority of the material. If you're doing a shorter piece, even though you can get all the way up, you can completely saw it half in two. A shorter piece for you to have your hand holding in here, that is not safe. Don't do it. Now, I'm going to show you just in a minute on a shorter piece another alternative. Now, this one isn't pinching too bad, but it could be. By gently incrementing up, because of this material in here, it's going to keep it from being able to pinch real fast and real aggressive. It's much safer. But you also notice something. When I'm cutting, I'm out of the line of fire. My knee is right here at my switch. If I get in trouble, I can turn this saw off that quick. So be careful doing it. Now what I'm doing is I've got that 1/8 of an inch kerf. Now somebody's going to ask me if a thin kerf blade would work. Certainly will, and you take less out. But even then, I'm going to tell you again, make sure you increment up through that gently. All right. It's very simple. What we've done is we've removed the bulk of the material on this wider piece so that we're not going to tax and be going all over the place. We're going to bandsaw the least we have to. Now here's another thing. Let your bandsaw, when you're sawing, let it cut at its pace. You know, you see me pulling. If I'm pulling really, really aggressive, I'm putting a lot of pressure on that blade. And I'll tell you what will happen. If you're really pulling hard, when that blade exits on this end, it'll pop out, and I've seen it break the blade. Let it cut at its own pace. Now we have a resaw. Now a little planing or drum sander, and you have a resaw. Works pretty nice. Now, we'll lay this aside. Now we're going to come over here to a little different method on a table saw. Now I've already got it set up. It's pretty simple. What I've got is this simply, I can ride it over, in this case I'm riding it over the fence. I can also make one that'll ride against the fence, depending upon your table saw. Pretty self-explanatory. I've got a stop right here. I just rigged me up a little toggle clamp. It's very obvious what we're doing. On this narrow piece, it's going to keep us completely out of the way. The toggle clamp is actually a little bit high on this. Again, remember that pinch thing, where when you remove that, because you can't use a splitter, now they've got some little ones out here now that set up real low back here. I don't have one. That might work. But what happens right here is as I'm removing this little piece of crotch, as I'm removing this material and that thing tries to come in, it's trying to pinch on that blade. Same reason we don't want this featherboard tight to it. Because if we have it tight, it's going to push into that blade and try and create us an issue. But I want to do the exact same thing. I want to ease into this cut. See, if this toggle clamp was way down here, it's going to be trying to pinch that into that blade. We don't want that. Don't do that. Now I hope you heard that. You heard it. That means it's trying to pinch a little bit. In that case, I'm not going to pull back over top of this blade, because then it's going to try to pinch and push toward me. You can actually see the gap closing a little. Now this is the nice thing about sneaking up on it. Gradually is the next pass through, it's going to take a little bit more off of this. It's going to take out the pinch instead of encapsulating it and making it jerk back at me. Now the other thing to toggle, as we get down in here where the danger of this thing pinching on me, there you go, the other side, is more. The toggle clamp, what it's doing in reality is it's actually putting a pressure on the top, which is going to cause this piece of wood to kind of do this a little bit, so it kind of helps prevent some of that pinch. Okay, I could keep going, but rarely do I go much. I always leave about an inch in here, and I don't worry, because then I'm going to bandsaw that. I don't want to go all the way through. If I do, then this piece is going to be slamming into that. It's going to be trying to pinch the blade. This is my safety net. That center piece is my... Now once I've done that, then again, it's simply back through the bandsaw. All right, guys. Now, I could have probably been a little bit more diligent about making sure I had dead center on this, but I was more interested in showing you. But here's what I want you to notice is that this piece of crotch, it's actually bowed a little bit this way, and it's already trying to cup a little. See it? How do you and the bigger the pieces, the worse they are. How do you handle that? Here's some tricks. First thing is your outside is what's going to gather. Now I've actually dampened this surface and this surface. Why would I do that? The reason is that I'm actually putting a little bit of moisture back into what was our outside, to try to balance a little bit with the inside. Now, but here's a trick. You can stack them. That's a good thing. Putting sticks in between them and let them dry. Always do your resawing with plans of letting it acclimate, adjust to the environment before you try to use it. Now here's another little trick you can do. Just take you some little clamps and now clamp what was your inside to the outside. And simply let them dry. In the event that you're trying to get a lot of cup, and that can happen, believe me, you can also take a thin piece of wood, thin meaning 1/8 of an inch, something like that, depending upon how much movement you're getting, and stick it in the center of here so that when you clamp this together, you're actually over pulling it. Now what we're doing is we're letting each side pull against itself, and we're allowing it to acclimate and hopefully be as flat as it can be. But I will tell you this much, okay? Always resaw with two things in mind. One, you're not going to get a perfectly flat board out of it. So you want to, when you resaw something, resaw it as thick as you possibly can so that you have as much room as possible for resurfacing, because you're going to have to do it. Now, super thin pieces, very thin pieces, you can put through your drum sander or whatever the case, and just the pressure feed rollers will hold them down nice and flat so that you can sand them. Thicker pieces, they're a little bit more rigid. Now, if you're going to, 9 times out of 10, just as in the case of these crotches, they would be used for a drawer front or whatever. So they're going to be getting glued to something else. If going in, if you have the one side nice and clean, nice and flat, you can then glue that to whatever board or whatever your substrate is, and then sand your resawn side. That'll help hold them down flat. But if you're trying to get it where it's going to be freestanding, know in advance, okay? You're not going to resaw a piece of 1/4 inch material and come out with a piece of 1/4 inch material that you're going to be able to use. It can move, it can twist as you release these stresses. That's resawing, guys. You can get some beautiful results, but no matter what you do, be careful. I'm Charles Neal. I'll catch you later. Hey guys, y'all remember me telling you about the young man that took his bride to all the sawmills on his honeymoon? It's been a few years since then.
47.
47?
Yep.
But he took you to all the sawmills.
Every sawmill between Washington, D.C. and New York City.
On your honeymoon?
On our honeymoon.
And your backyard is filled full of?
Wood. Wood has been his passion ever since I've known him. He actually made me a cedar chest, and my father said it was a casket. That's a father's daughter, you know.
Man likes wood, guys. Let's go take a look at some of it. Well, I got to tell you, Dolores went on camera and she confessed to the honeymoon thing.
That's fine. That's all right. Yep. She likes telling that story. Doesn't get any better.
I asked her if she knew what she was in for, and she said not really, but it's been worth it.
I don't know about that part. Hey, get out of there, dog.
Well, they're trying to help.
Hey, yeah, that's right. That's right. They've been digging around here. I don't know if they've been getting odor or what, you know.
Well, we're going to go up here and film a little bit of your wood.
All right. Okay. That's fine.
And we just filmed that.
I know you did.
All right, guys, look, Norman's not around, so I got to show y'all something. I know I've been up here a time or two. Come on, Billy. Here I am. You guys are not going to believe this, but it's the truth. I don't know how well you can see it, and you guys are going to have a fit. It's sawn. Billy, you can try to get a shot of the steps and get a shot, just get a little shot of the barn floor that he had to replace. Billy, you know what that is? It's zebra wood. The man's floor in his barn is made of zebra wood. I kid you not. Come take a look. That's dedication, guys. That's dedication. Billy, if you can back up, you can get, there's every kind of slab you can think of, from cherry, tiger maple, Claro walnut. All right, here's some 12, 16 quarter, here's some walnut, back in here's some cherry. You know, one of the things when you get into dimensional lumber like this, the 12 and 16 quarters and whatever, there's a tremendous amount of effort goes into this. It's a lot of time it takes for air drying. And the reason is, you know, it takes a good bit to get these things properly cured. And that's something we'll be talking about in another segment of how this is done and how you have to deal with it when you get it. Because like we said, one of the problems is when you get into this big stuff, is that the inside of it is never as dry as the outside, no matter what you do. Okay, Billy, if you can, come in and get a shot on some of this. Norman's got, these guys have got 20 quarter, 25 quarter. This is a specialty mill. This is nothing your run-of-the-mill average anything. And if you'll note, you know, Norman, you know, these guys, one of the things you'll notice, even the stickers, is something they have made and bought. It's not just sticks in between, that they buy them special for air and air movement and everything else in between here. And that, you know, even those, they're not cheap. So there's a lot goes into processing and making this lumber into usable pieces for us. Go look at some more. Here's cherry. You know, 12 quarter, 16 quarter, curly cherry, dimensional stuff. Over here's some 4 quarter, 5 quarter, just some phenomenal stuff in here. Takes a lot of hunting, takes a lot of searching. I'll let Billy just kind of pan around this one building and just, you can get a little sense of the amount of stuff that's in here.
Check to make sure it isn't just in one spot where you had a big limb above or something that caused compression curl. So that's part of it. You also have to take about a 1-inch slice right through, and then you break it in quarters. Make sure if the curl goes in toward the heart on all 4 quarters or just one or whatever, then you got to make your decision whether or not there's enough there. You also need to clip the bottom in to make sure there isn't rot or whatever. On soft maple, the hearts, which this one happens to be about 5 inches diameter here, you don't want them very big because the heartwood is generally defective and the curl usually does not go into the heartwood. In some cases it does, and it can be pretty, but the only hearts that I would buy that were any size, they had to be a big log, and it has to be a pink heart instead of brown or black, because the brown or black doesn't work out very well. The pink heart can be quite pretty.
Now Norman, this is a piece of curly maple, soft maple. Okay, now curly maple and hard maple, and curly maple, soft maple. Okay, yeah. What's the difference in curly maple and tiger maple?
None.
Okay.
It's who's talking about it.
You got it.
Basically.
Exactly.
You know, all right. The hard maple, generally we weren't getting too much of it. We haven't gotten a little bit more here in the last 6 months for the hard curly maple. This is a soft here.
Okay. Now one of the things that I run into, and having bought wood from you, when we get these nice, big, huge, gorgeous, wide slabs, that takes a massive log. Okay, people are of the assumption that if a tree is 20 inches wide, you get 20-inch boards.
No, no. Well, you take a look at this one. The heart happens to be pretty well centered here. The pith, not the heart. The heartwood is the brown, but the pith on all hardwood trees is a hollow tube, and depending on the species, some of them you can't get very close to at all before the board, if you cut it across here and had the pith in it, it would split and you have two pieces. Cherry is notorious that way. But anyway, this log is 14 inches in diameter this way. If you cut it straight across here, you would not have a 14-inch wide board. By the time you're done, you have brown defects in it, you have knots and whatever else, plus the pith would be down in it, and it would probably separate. So you do not get that. This log here, the best, if I can set it up, the best I'll get is a piece of 8/4 off this side, a piece off of that side, and maybe a piece of 12/4 in between here on the third and fourth side. So that's what you're looking at out of this log.
No more of that. That's it.
That's it. You know, you might get a brown one face or a white one face board for a piece of flooring, but that's not the idea.
Yeah.
These logs, if you get 50% yield, you're doing great.
Okay, if you show them what, if you're going to flat saw something or you're going to quarter saw something,
Okay.
what's the difference?
Well,
Because in quarter sawing, the yield is much, much, much less.
well, quarter sawing this log would be fruitless.
Right, I understand. Yeah, okay.
Too small. But you know, if you look at this log, and if you're going to flat saw it, I'd probably, it's easier to tell once you get up on the mill, but I'd probably take this face and bring the first cut in to take the slab off here, and if I was going to do a piece of 8/4, I drop down, and here you are, across here.
Got it.
There's your piece of 8/4, and by the time you edge it, you've got a piece like this. Okay, and do the same thing on this far side. So if everything works well, you got two pieces of 8/4, and then you've got your third and fourth side to deal with. Depending on the width of the log, you may get a piece of 12/4 out of it, or if
Now the 12/4 is going to come left and right of the heart.
yeah, if I do piece of 12/4, unfortunately this is wax, so you're not seeing this. You get the piece out of here, like that. Your 12/4 here and 12/4 here. And depending on what the heart looks like when I uncover it on these two faces, I may decide that I can get a piece of 16/4 off of each side with a little bit of brown in the back of it. It's going to stay together.
Gotcha.
So, you know, it's when you open them up, you've got to take the opportunities that present themselves.
Gotcha.
It's not foolproof, and it's not
It's an experience thing, definitely.
Yeah. So that's what you're looking at.
How long you been sawing wood?
Not that long. If I had to read the scale and set everything manually, I wouldn't get anywhere. So that's why I have the automatic set works on the wood miser. So I can.
But how long
program
you
it
been in the wood business and dealing with wood?
Forever. Since my grandfather took me down the basement at a few years old and let me play in the sawdust.
I did it.
That did it.
Gotcha. Now, if we were going to if we were going to quarter saw this,
Okay, if this log was big enough, okay, the first thing you would do is split it down through the middle, down through the pith, okay, like this. So you'd wind up with two pieces, this piece and that piece, and then you would have to take these two pieces and cut those like so.
just kind of like taking a cucumber and cutting it 4 ways.
Yeah, yep, or a piece of pie and cutting it 4 ways.
Got
if you're
it.
picky enough.
Right.
Okay, all right.
I can eat a quarter of a piece of pie.
Yeah, I used to. So anyway, you've got these two pieces like that, and you have to deal with them separately on the mill. And the first thing you would do is put this face down on the mill and set it so you can get a flat on this. This face would be down. Your horizontal band mill runs this way, so you cut a piece off here.
So you just start slicing right up to...
No.
Oh.
Let me get, you wouldn't have quarter sawn. The idea on quarter sawn is to get the vertical grain, okay? So no, the reason you're doing this is to get edge that is parallel to this edge.
Got it.
Okay, then on the wood miser you can set it up, take a slice off here, which is quartered, flip it around, take another slice off this side, which is quarter sawn.
Got it.
And you keep working back and forth, and soon, if you take more than one or two on a small log, you're into rift sawn, you're no longer quartered. So you, after you get the one off, you probably take a wedgie piece out here. So you're back on quarter sawn here.
Gotcha.
But if you look at what we're doing on this small log here, the quarter sawn piece that is white would only be this wide, which is useless.
Right.
You know, so you don't do it on small logs.
Right. But you also, even in a great big log, the yield is far less.
Yeah, it's far less because
What's the advantage of quarter sawn log?
the only reason the quarter sawn is to get the vertical grain. And anything like cherry or maple, the medullary rays do not show up much. But white oak,
Right.
it does show up. You get the nice flake, and you get the furniture that was built back in when, the 50s or
Yeah,
30s.
exactly.
You get the big flakes across it.
And a lot of guys like the quarter sawn white oaks and whatever for like the
Paneling, for furniture,
the arts and crafts and
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Got it.
that's where you get it.
Okay.
So, anyway,
Let's cut a log.
okay, we'll throw this one up and take a couple slices off.
All right, this might be hard to hear, but right here, Norman's got a laser line that's showing him where his first cut's gonna go. Let's head again.
You're lining it up so you can cut these small logs so you're parallel to the bark.
Mm-hmm.
That way you get more of the white wood, more uniform.
Okay.
Otherwise you'd have tapered pieces. In a small log like this, you wouldn't get anything you needed.
Gotcha.
So, and I usually make one run down there to see where I am.
Gotcha. And that becomes packing material.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, guys. Now you met Norman. Well, this is Paul Keyes, otherwise known as Skip. If you call him Paul, he won't answer you. Skip. Right?
Hi.
We didn't get much out of this log.
We did fine. For the
Okay.
size log it was. Got 1/4 off each side and 2 pieces of heavy. That's how your bedposts come out.
Now, you told me that this piece where we cut a 16/4, because of the heart that's in it, we're going to cut it on down to a piece of 12/4.
Correct.
Gotcha. So when you, no matter what you do, you know, you go out here and you hunt these logs, you buy these logs, you do all these checks, you bring them in, but when you put them on the mill and you saw it, it's still like Christmas. You're opening, you don't know what you got till the package is opened.
Exactly.
So it's a win some, lose some.
Oh, you lose more than you win.
I understand. So when some guy like me calls you up and says, hey Skip, I'm doing a big tiger maple pencil post or cherry and I want all 4 posts to match, to be out of the same log. Of course you laugh and say things to me, but we know each other a little bit. But that don't happen. That's really hard to come by.
In a whole load of maybe 40 logs, you might get 4 logs that'll do that.
I
That'll
understand.
provide those kind of posts.
And the other thing is as you've seen, it's hard for you to see on camera. One side of this log's a lot curlier than the other. So even when you get those 4 posts or you get those 4 pieces, you're going to have a difference, okay? It's just the way it is. But the thing I want, how long is it going to take for all of this to be dried, ready to sell?
Turnaround time's usually a year. But we're
Even on the
small.
12 and the 16/4?
Yeah, we're a small mill. Maple dries faster than anything else we have in stock.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll air dry, and I don't know if I should show you how that works, but I will. We had these large sticks. They're basically 1 3/4 inch and 7/8 milled, and that's what we put between our heavy lumber. That allows more air to get between the boards, so you get a faster turnaround time on your air drying. Conventional were tiny sticks, 3/4, 7/8 stick, and we use that for our 4/4, 5/4, 6/4 lumber. But on the heavy lumber, we use the heavier sticks, thicker sticks, so we get a faster turnaround.
More airflow.
More airflow brings it to market faster.
So how long do you need to let it air dry before you can put it in the kiln?
We typically let everything go down between 12 to 16% before we put it in the kiln, and that could take anywhere from 6 to 8 months to get to that point.
Okay. But And you do that, and because if you dry it too fast, then you case harden it, you blow it up, you just ruin it.
You can.
There's a lot out there to do. All right, you said you got some stuff in the kiln we can see?
Sure.
All right, Skip, we've got an oil-fired boiler.
Right.
All our controls are in here. What kind of temperature do you average in there drying?
At this part of the drying, I've got it set at 108, I think. Yeah. And it's running between 106 and 109, depending if it's the front of the kiln or the back of the kiln, because of the way the air's coming through the lumber.
Right. So, and as you get to the end of the cycle, do you bring the heat up on it?
Yeah, typically it finishes off at 120, between 120 and 125, the last 4 or 5 days of the cycle.
How long does it take a kiln load to cycle through?
I run it 4 weeks.
Okay.
It can be done faster, but you saw the size of the company. We have to do everything slow, or we'll get nothing done.
Right. I understand. And when you dry it, and you dry it slow, you get sound, solid. You don't get a bunch of internal compression and this and that.
Well, you get a better product.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
When you feel a board, you can tell the difference between one that was dried fast and one that was dried slow.
Oh, absolutely. But slow costs more than fast.
Just takes more time.
And oil ain't cheap.
Right.
Well, guys, we can't get in here too far, and it's mighty warm.
Huh.
And this is the kiln. And you said on a perfect load, you can get about 10,000 feet.
Right.
You got about 5,000 feet in here now, and slabs in the front and whatever. Billy, if you can kind of zero in on a little bit of this curly maple or tiger maple laying here, and you start to see as it's drying, it's feeling pretty good. How much longer has this got to go?
Almost 3 weeks.
Still 3 to
It's
go.
only been in here a week.
Okay.
This is your sugar maple.
Right. Soft maple.
Right.
Right?
Hard maple.
No, I know that. I want you to clear it.
Oh, all right.
Tell them.
This is sugar maple. Another word, you know, you want to call it rock maple, hard maple. He was messing with me. Anyway, this is your sugar maple. That's what they tap to make your maple syrup. There is some soft maple mixed in with this, but primarily this pack here is hard maple. This is a
True or false? You get the most curly out of the sugar, out of the soft or the hard maple?
the soft maple. We ran into a mill in the last 6 months that we've actually got more sugar maple, hard maple, curly logs than we've ever cut in the last 10 years. We've cut them all in the last 6 months. But it's the tract of timber they're cutting, and everyone's different.
All right, sugar maple's hard maple. What color's leaves turn in fall?
Red,
What's what's soft maple turn?
no idea. I have no idea.
Y'all figure that one out. All right, Skip. Give me a tour. Tell me what's in here. I want these people to get a feel for dealing with a specialty mill. You know, you're not the guy that you call up and want 2 boards that's 8 inches wide by 3 foot.
Right.
That's not what you do.
Right.
Okay, you're very specific, very specialized, high-figured, high-end woods.
Right.
Stuff I like. Tell me what's in here. Show me.
Well, and the way I'm set up, this is where everything comes from when you order it from us. This is the barn we sell out of, unless it's over 14 foot long, and then we keep it up in the barn where we saw at, which you saw earlier. Most customers, if they're within 6 hours, we encourage them to come and visit one time. You can come more, but usually most people only ever want to come once. Neil never comes. This is our cherry aisle here. There's cherry here. This is my miscellaneous aisle, but most of my cherry stays in that aisle there. It's a little disrupted right now, but I wasn't expecting to be shooting a video. Our tiger maple aisle is behind the cameraman, which you can't even see because it's blocked. And then that's our walnut aisle over there. If you call me for a particular project you want to build, I'm going to ask you a series of questions to narrow it down to what you want to use. For example, what we specialize in is match sets of lumber. This right here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 boards, so that means it's 8 boards across. That's one log of figured cherry. This particular one, I have no idea how many feet are in it because I haven't gotten around to looking at it yet. This one here has 6 boards. It does have 92 board feet in it. I made a note of that. And then down here on the bottom, this is November 7th. And that doesn't mean any more than the actual day I looked at it the first time. That's an excellent figured log. It's 11 feet, and it also has 96 board feet in it. I have the measurements written down somewhere inside on a chart that I keep of my inventory, and I also have photographs of that one. So you know it's special if I took the time to take photographs of it and know all the information about it. Another one we do, this is walnut here, this stack. And this is good for a walnut log. All these boards are from one tree. And they range, anywhere from 12 to 20 inches wide. And they're a little over 8 feet long. I don't even have that inventory, because that's a big set. And I only get a call a couple times a year that's going to need a set that big. And when I do, the customer's usually patient enough to give me a few days to come out and look at it, decide whether or not it's going to work for them. Another one we have is here. This is a figured walnut log. We cut this a couple years ago. It's been dry since the 1st of last year. And I actually know where that's going. That's going to go into a guy that does relief carved blanket chests. He carves the tops out and leaves your initials in the top. He hasn't come to get it because there's 4 more logs that go with this one, and he wants to look at all of them before he makes a decision on which one he's going to take, or he might take all of them, I don't know. But we do custom cut for most of our customers. We don't have a lot of customers, so we're able to keep an inventory of what they're going to need for their next project. And that's how we operate.
But somebody's doing a lot of hunting to find the spectacular nice stuff. There's no doubt.
Oh, that's Norman. That's what he does. He hunts logs. I take care of it from there.
Man does like wood, don't he?
Every log's like Christmas.
Yep.
If we had a football stadium, he'd fill it.
Nothing wrong with that. Skip, good Hope Hardwood, guys. We'll catch you later.